Welcome to the second episode of Cloud Cafe, a series about cloud app development on the Atlassian platform. My name is Ralph Whitbeck. I'm a developer advocate for ecosystem developers building apps for our cloud products. In this video, I'll be walking you through the key concepts to creating a cloud app using Atlassian Connect. Atlassian Connect lets you add capabilities in UI and define places in an Atlassian cloud product. When you build an app, Connect handles discovery, installation, authentication, and seamless integration into the UI of the host product. You can use whatever tools you want to build the app, as long as you can make and receive HTTP requests. We provide two development frameworks to help you get started: Atlassian Connect for Node.js Express and Atlassian Connect for Spring Boot. These frameworks provide installation and authentication tools to make it easy to get a Connect app up and running quickly. You may also choose to use other tools and libraries more suited to your development goals. Since your app is hosted by you on your servers and talks to the host application over HTTP, you are free to use the technology stack of your choice. Cloud developers use a range of languages to build their apps: Node.js, Java, Ruby, .NET, really any language that can request and receive REST calls over HTTP can be used. Additionally, you can use whatever persistent storage you prefer: MySQL, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, SQL Server. Really, the choice is yours. Atlassian has a broad set of products, but only a few have Atlassian Connect: Confluence Cloud, Jira Core Cloud, Jira Software Cloud, Jira Service Desk Cloud, and Bitbucket Cloud. Now, these products have the base concept of Atlassian Connect. However, there are differences amongst the products themselves. So please make sure to reference each product developer documentation at developer.atlassian.com before starting developing your app. One thing to keep in mind about Atlassian products is that they have multiple deployment options. As a customer, you can choose the deployment option that fits you and your team. So for instance, if your team doesn't want to manage the hosting of a product, you would choose the cloud deployment option. However, if your team would like to keep your data on site and are comfortable with hosting your own server of the product, then server is probably the right choice for you. With this in mind, as a developer creating an app for a product, you also have to consider developing an app for the specific deployment option: server or cloud. The app development experience for each is completely different. So in this video, we are only looking at how to build an app for our cloud products. Atlassian provides a free small license cloud instance you can sign up for and use to develop your app against. Just go to go.atlassian.com/cloud-dev. Just log in with your Atlassian account ID and it'll walk you through setup. Please read the important notice about the number of users these instances are allowed: 5 users for Jira and Confluence, and 1 user agent for Jira Service Desk. Now, if you go over any of these user counts, you'll be charged for the extra users. If you do get charged, you can remove the extra users and you'll go back to the free edition. It'll take a few minutes to provision the site for you, but once done, you'll be shown a setup wizard to set up your site. Now, you can check out any cloud products getting started tutorial on developer.atlassian.com to help walk you through the setup. Now, your developer instance or any Atlassian cloud instance will be looking for your hosted app on a publicly accessible address. In a development loop, this can become very cumbersome if you have to constantly push to a staging or development server to see your changes. Now, we would recommend using a local tool that will expose your local host server publicly and provide a mapped URL to your development server. The tool we use in our frameworks is called ngrok. ngrok is free and can be used as a standalone command line tool, or you can integrate it into your project. Let's dive deeper into some of the key parts of a Connect app to understand how they work. When an admin discovers your app and installs it, the host product requests the app descriptor. In addition to information about you, the vendor partner, and the app's base URL, the app descriptor specifies your app's authentication method, all the modules your app uses, and the permission scopes it needs. In return, The host product uses your app's installation callback URL to send a security context that contains tenant information and a shared secret. Your app uses the shared secret to sign and validate requests exchanged between your app and the host product. The installation callback URL defined in your app descriptor is one of several endpoints that you can provide to receive notifications of different states in the app lifecycle when your app is installed, uninstalled, enabled, or disabled. The app descriptor is simply a JSON file with properties to describe your app. The Atlassian product only requires a few properties, while others are optional in every descriptor. Your descriptor must declare what authentication type your app uses. You can either use JWT or none. We will touch on this more in a minute. A base URL tells the product where to find your app on the internet. A key that identifies your app to the Atlassian platform. This key must be unique amongst all apps. It has a maximum length of 64 characters. It is recommended that you namespace the key with your company name in addition to the app name. This simple app descriptor, while not describing much of an app, is a complete app that can be installed into an Atlassian product. Here's what a complete app descriptor would look like. It describes all of the UI extensions into the app, as well as all of the options for each of those modules. It provides meta information for listing the app in the marketplace, as well as in the product's app management screen. For more information about app descriptors, please make sure to check out the app descriptor documentation. One of the first things you'll need to declare in your descriptor is the lifecycle callback locations. This allows an app to register callbacks for events that occur in the lifecycle of an installation. When a lifecycle event is fired, a post request will be made to the appropriate URL registered for the event. The installed lifecycle callback is an integral part of the installation process of an app, whereas the remaining lifecycle events are essentially webhooks. Each property in this object is a URL relative to the app's base URL. Lifecycle callbacks contain a JSON data payload with important tenant information that you will need to store in your app in order to sign and verify future requests. When you receive this data, the key pieces of information are the client key. This is the unique identifier of the tenant that installed your app. You'll need this payload data later in your app, so you should have saved this in your persistent storage database with the client key as the primary key. The other key piece of data you'll need is the shared secret, and you'll need this in conjunction with the client key to secure your requests to and from the Atlassian product. Atlassian Connect authenticates apps using JWT tokens. At installation time, the Connect app and the host product exchange a security context containing a shared secret used to create and validate JWT tokens for use in API calls. The use of JWT tokens guarantees that the Atlassian product can verify it is talking to the app and vice versa, and none of the query parameters of the HTTP request, nor the path, nor the HTTP method were altered in transit. The Atlassian Client Frameworks Atlassian Connect Express and Atlassian Connect Spring Boot include tools for creating and using JWT tokens easily. When communicating server to server with the Atlassian host product, your app uses a JWT token to access protected resources, including most of the REST APIs. When you use the frameworks, this is handled for you. If you are not using the frameworks, you can use JWT libraries to construct a token. You can see the creating a JWT token documentation in developer.atlassian.com and the Atlassian supported claims that you need to construct. To gain a better understanding of JWT authentication, please watch the video from Developer Day that will help you understand JWT and how it's used in Atlassian Connect and how to create and verify JWT tokens yourself. To use a module in your app, declare the module in your app descriptor file under Modules, including any required properties. The properties you include control the customization options for your module. For example, this module adds content to the byline of the Confluence page, just below the page title. Some modules use iframes to render your custom content to the Atlassian product. Now, an iframe instance whose parent and child reside on different domains or host names constitutes a sandbox environment. The contained page has no access to its parent. These restrictions are imposed by the browser's same origin policy. So there are a few limitations applicable to iframes. Style sheet properties from the parent do not cascade to the child page. Child pages have no access to the parent's DOM and JavaScript properties. And likewise, the parent has no access to its child's DOM or JavaScript properties. You must add the all.js script to your HTML pages that will render in the iframe in order to establish the cross-domain messaging bridge. If you're using the Atlassian Connect Express client library to build your app, this will automatically be inserted into your pages at runtime. Since you'll be rendering your own HTML in a module's iframe, Atlassian provides a front-end component library you can use to make your app look like it belongs in the Atlassian product. AtlasKit is a React component library that you can use in your app. Head over to atlaskit.atlassian.com to learn more about the library. Let's put all these pieces together and look at a sample app. We're going to use Node and Atlassian Connect Express to build our app here. So here's some assumptions that we're going to be making about the sample app. One being that you know what Express.js does and is doing for you, that you also are a little bit familiar with Node.js. And then everything else we'll just sort of piece together. First thing we want to do is we want to create a boilerplate app. And we have a command line tool that you can download from npm to make that easy for you. So npm install. We want to make this global. Atlas Connect is the tool that we want. Once you have Atlas Connect installed, you can easily run it by doing Atlas Connect new. Let's say countries. Select macro. So what this will do is ask you what kind of app you want to build, Jira Service Desk, Confluence, or Bitbucket. HipChat's still in there from old times. And it builds a boilerplate project for you. So it has all of the things that you need to get an app up and running with a very little minimal amount of setup. And so we can go into this folder now. And the first thing we want to do is do an npm install. This will install all of the dependencies for this project, including Atlassian Connect Express. Great. We now have our folder in here. Let's take a look at the code. Let's open up code. And so what this provides us is this credentials.json.sample. Let's take a look at this first. This is the first thing you need to do to get your app set up. And this is an Atlassian Connect Express sort of thing to help you with developing your app. So what you would do is you would put your instance name, instance URL here. The product would be Confluence, lowercase c though. The username would be your email address that you used for your Atlassian account ID. And the password would actually be the API token. You would go to id.atlassian.com, log in as you, and in there you can request an API token. And once you request that token, you can then paste that in right here. Now that we've got our code set up, now we can start adding in the pieces of functionality. I've actually have a sample app already set up that does the country select macro. So let's take a look at that code. So here is the Atlassian Connect JSON, or the app descriptor file, and we have a key, we have a name for it, we have a description. Our base URL is going to be dynamically generated through Atlassian Connect Express. Our authentication type is going to be JWT. We have an installed lifecycle webhook defined. We have some scopes defined. So if we're going to utilize any APIs, we're only going to utilize these scopes. So we're only going to be reading from our Atlassian product. And then we have some modules defined. So dynamic content macros. So we have one of those defined, and we'll go through this in a little bit more detail. First thing I want to do is I want to show you the development loop of an app. So if we go npm start, this will start up the app. This is Node's way of starting up the app. So some things I want you to look at. So app server running at, and then local tunnel established. So it's already got ngrok installed and is working. And this is working because we have set up the credentials.json file. The other thing to note here, so that's this URL here. So we can actually get to the app if we wanted to go there. Then it does an automatic register of the add-on with the host product, and we set that instance name in our credentials.json file. So our app already knows how to talk to our development instance that we've set up. So then it gets the Atlassian Connect JSON file. It reads the install lifecycle webhook. It actually returns our payload that we're expecting. So that's all that data there. We can see that the host did a post to our installed webhook, and it then tells us that it's registered. So now if I scroll over to my instance, my development instance, and I go to the apps drop down and go to manage apps. Now this lists all of the apps that are installed into this instance. And here is my app. So my app is what we listed as the name in the app descriptor. My very first app is what we listed in the description, the app key, my app, all of these things you should have saw in the app descriptor. So let's actually run this app. So let's create a page. Let's call this page my favorite country. All right. And so our app is a macro, so we can use the slash to pull up the macro explorer. And our macro is called countries map. So when I click on that, I get this macro dialog, and it's asking pick a country. We're limiting it down just for ease of selection. I'll pick Canada. And so when I hit save, a map of the world comes in here with Canada highlighted. And then I could add some more. I like Canada because it's cold. And they play hockey. All right, let's publish that. So now that I publish it, our dynamic macro is going to read in the data that we entered into it and highlight Canada as a map on our page. All right, let's dive into the code. One other thing I wanted to show you, if you do a Control-C, it will stop that app. It'll also deregister that app from your instance. So you don't have to constantly install and uninstall your app. All you have to do is just run and stop your app to have that show the new code changes that you make. All right, let's take a look at this dynamic content macro. The first thing we're going to notice is we're defining a URL. And this URL is what's going to render that map. So our URL is slash. Remember, the slash is going to be relative to the base URL. And so our base URL is going to be that ngrok URL that gets generated as we're starting up the app. And it's going to go to slash render map. And then has some other parameters that are going to get passed into the page. Well, let's go find where this is. So if you're at all familiar with Express, Express has this notion of routes. And so in there is this route called index.js. And in there we can find an app.get for render map. And so render map has this res.render macro view map. Now macro view map matches a view called macro view map. And so we can look at that here. And this is showing that it's pulling in a template called layout. And let's take a look at that real quick because I wanted to show you So this is just the actual HTML page, and in there is this body that the macro view map is going to actually render into. But one thing I did want to show is it is including the all.js. Remember, we talked about this is an important thing to do the cross-domain messaging between the host and your app. So it did include that. It also includes a lot of other um, uh, style sheets and JavaScript files. These JavaScript files actually we did put in there to be able to build the map. So that is something that we're putting in there. I'm not going to cover how that works, how the map actually works, but these are key data and JS files to render that map. Go back to the route, and then let's go back to the view for macro view map. And so in here we have a div that has map container, and then we have AP require that's getting some macro data, populating our map, getting the output type that's being passed into it from the app descriptor. So output type here is getting passed in, and this is getting read in from the macro parameters that after we selected it. If we're previewing it, where we're setting the preview width to 480. If we're not previewing it, we're getting a different width. We're determining the height, country names to highlight. We're selecting the selected countries. We could potentially have multiple selected countries. We're then rendering the map. This is a JavaScript function in one of those JavaScript files. And then we're capturing the element ID and then inserting the map into that inner HTML. Pretty simple, right? There's not a lot going on here. So basically, the selection of the map relates to some kind of highlighting of that map, and the JavaScript is figuring that all out for us. The key functionality here is the definition of this dynamic content macro here. So we have the name. This is that country's map that we were able to select from our macro browser. This is also the description that showed in our macro browser. The icon, this was the icon that was showing in the macro browser. The width of the macro is 100%. The category, so this is the category that the macro would be listed under in the dialog version of the macro browser. It's a block type of output, has no body type, alias is map. So we could type in /map and get that. So then we declare parameters. Now parameters are the macro input parameters. And so this is an identifier selected country. So the dialog that pops up that asks us to select the country is going to be saving that data into an identifier called selected country. And we're able to grab that macro param selected country. We're able to grab that right there. So we provide a name and description, and this is what is actually being displayed in the macro dialog. We also are defining the actual drop-down menu. So we're doing a type of enum, and the values for each of those are going to be Australia, Canada, Ukraine. It's not hidden. Default value is map. We can't select multiples, and it is required. It is true. So, so these are all the parameters that define the input box, dialog box on the page. This covers the basics of building a Connect app. All of the links and videos mentioned in this video can be found in the description. If you have questions or need help building your app, please head over to the developer community, community.developer.atlassian.com, where there is a huge community of app developers and Atlassians willing and eager to help you. In the next episode of Cloud Cafe, we'll look at Forge, a new way to build cloud apps.